tried to show from this material the death and resurrection of Heru. And I speak in terms of the woman who slammed the door on Aset, trying to show the weakness and the personality, how we've been driven by thoughts and ideas that really doesn't have anything to do with us, in one sense. This woman, as I said, she'd been driven by a thought because Set had already, let me say, set the perimeter. He had set the stage by announcing to the world that anyone who takes in Aset, he's going to kill, he's going to destroy them. So she become influenced by the thought and the idea of what is going to happen to her if she take in Aset and her child, Heru. And then I went on to try to show the spiritual strength within the personality of Aset, how Aset responded to the situation that she found herself in, because she had just came out of prison, traveling as a pregnant woman, and we can add, as they use the term today, single mother, because her husband and friend, which was Aset, was killed by Set. So she seeks shelter, and she was denied shelter. But she didn't respond to the situation with anger, with hatred, grief, sorrow, but she responded to the situation in a conscious way. While she acted in a way to resolve the situation, she didn't get absorbed into the situation. Because the situation she finds herself in, where that woman slammed the door, we can look at it from a point of ignorance. But she resolved that situation without being absorbed into the situation, because why? She had what is considered to be spiritual strength. So in order to say she was detached from the situation, that's the way, as a spiritual aspirant, you need to resolve issues in your life. You need to be detached from the issues in order to solve the issues. If you are not really being detached from the issues, it will end up to be like a chain and a ball. You both are tied together. The issues is going to pull you down because you are attached to it. So you have to detach from the issue, emotional, in feelings and such like, in order to resolve the situation that you can see clearly. That's one of the ways you build spiritual strength as you keep going down the line. So today I'm looking at the woman again. And I'm looking at the woman as a representative of us, the personality in what we do with ourselves. The woman slammed the door in the face of Aset. Again, because of the influence of the thoughts and ideas that was already perpetrated by Set, she'd been influenced by such a thought. So she become what is considered to be conditioned by the thought and idea of Set, motivation to kill. And I put myself in this situation and I look at what is happening to us, not only individually, but as a cultural group. Individually, we are conditioned in the sense that our condition, our karma issues, rather than taking stock in order to resolve these situations, we slam the door. So in order to say, we close our eyes, we shut our ears from listening to the truth and trying to understand what can I do to resolve my situations. We become influenced through the conditioning of the society that we live in. And that conditioning influences us to believe that we are thinking in the right direction. You know, as it says in a certain aspect of teachings, talk about, you know, a child learning to balance itself. When the child picks up the balance, then the child automatically starts walking. But the child doesn't know exactly where and when it was conditioned to start that process in walking. And it's the same thing with us individually and collectively. We are in a state using a process, a thought process, and believing to ourselves that we are thinking. Because we doesn't understand where it starts. We just find ourselves thinking and believe to ourselves we are thinking. It's why I said last week, we are what we do, moving from what I call automation and just reflex. We haven't really put in within ourselves no solid concentration in our way of thinking. What we do, we follow. As individuals, we follow. And why we follow? Because we are a culture that teaches us this is the way to go. So what happens? Even in our whole struggle as a collective group, what we do, we follow rather than concentrate on the things that is best for us. So what we have done is to slam the door in the face of our own culture, our own religious way of life, our own practical maneuvers in terms of conscious movement. And it's very simple to understand it. We have a tradition, and I ask people here sometimes, wear white. Put on something white and come. Well, most people, and I'm just using here as an example, not try to look on anybody, but as an example. Many people find it difficult to wear white clothes. Because they align it, they say, well, white represent, you know, the white people and something like. Well, I could have an answer to that. Then if you are so much into aligning that with something that have nothing to do with it, I say get rid of your white corpuscles. Get rid of your bones. Get rid of the platex in the body. The plasma. Get rid of those things in the body. And let's see what would happen. So what we are doing, we're shutting the door upon our own practice, our own advancement. And nothing can come out of that more than pain, destruction, and sorrow. As the woman slammed the door in the face of Aset, all she was able to do was inculcate and invite more pain and sorrow in her life. Because one of the scorpions that was traveling with Aset entered into the house of in the woman and killed herself. There she finds herself in a state of pain, sorrow, distress. She began to clamor, run, bawl, ailing, she needs help. And this is the situation we find ourselves not only culturally, but individually. As individuals, to practice spirituality becomes a difficult task for many people. Why it becomes difficult? Because the contrast of the, let me say, known religion or the most popular religion The contrast to that, where you can walk into that religion and think and do anything, as a matter of fact, you don't have to think. You just walk in and follow. Jump and follow suit. You walk in anyhow and you go out anyhow. It's one of the reasons you see people walking about with a Bible locked under their arms, and if you ask them where Genesis is, they look in Revelation. They don't know what's going on. But it becomes a popular thing. And because the influence of the society that already tell you that African religion is a religion of no good, it's a religion of idolatry, it's a religion of sacrifice, it's a religion of Buddhism and such like, it becomes difficult for you who are looking for yourself in terms of the cultural pattern, difficult to accept it. Because you've been influenced by the wider society, and through that wider society, look what we do, how we follow it. And I use to close an example, and I've not only seen it in America here, I've seen it in Africa also. We want to carry on with what we call an Afrocentric, I know where the O comes in, but nevertheless, let's go with it. An Afrocentric consciousness, Afrocentric mentality. But when we go into our gods and goddesses, we go with a European concept. How do we go with a European concept? We want to dress like the European. We want to speak like the European. We present everything to our gods and goddesses like a European. It has nothing to do with the African. So then, what are we doing? Where is our consciousness? Where is this Afrocentric consciousness that we're talking about? As I said before, we can converse very influentially where African history is concerned, but the practice of it makes a big difference. The only way we can gain strength as a cultural group, we have to be able to practice our religion, practice through the consciousness, through the worldview, through the model that is laid down to practice. And I often use the Fourth Truth as a great model for the African consciousness. Because in that model, it gives us a worldview, one God. It gives us a set of value, Ma'at. It shows us the sense of self-responsibility and responsibility for the community. How to resolve your issues, all of that is laid out. It's a model. But as I said again, you cannot find enlightenment in the book. The book is a tool that will give you certain information. Enlightenment only comes through practice. And it's the same thing. We as a cultural group, we cannot gain what we call a standard of high living without a perfect practice. It's not going to happen. We can speak about spirituality all along the line, but if we don't practice the discipline and the principles, then it don't make no sense. And these are some of the things we slam the door upon our own progress. Why? Because we are influenced and being conditioned by the society, by European way of thinking, European patterns. So what we find ourselves following European values, European worldview, European standard of living, and that's where we try to judge ourselves to. That's where we judge African consciousness to. That's what we judge enlightenment to be. So everything has to fall under the perimeter of what European concept's supposed to be, and not under the worldview of what African consciousness is really all about, what enlightenment is really all about. So we get stopped. The doors are slammed. And because the doors are slammed, what happens? We end up with only pain and sorrow, more grief and more headaches. In spite of all this that we say, racism no more, well, that's a good story to go about with. But we still bring within it, not we bringing it rather, it's still within your own community where your sons and your daughters are being castigated, being maligned, and thrown into prison for no justified reason, but lies and schemes, and to keep you down, break your moral esteem, keep you into a state of subjection. Fear, as Aset sent out the message, you remain in a state of fear. As I said the last time, we are a people, look what we have to do. We have to write little books to give our children to walk the street. For when the police stop up, or when some white person stop them, then we have to look at the book and say, well, you know, I can't answer this. What kind of people, isn't that something crazy into that? Isn't that kind of crazy way of living? What type of life is that are you living? Where is your salvation? And it's the same thing when you're practicing. You can only gain, from a cultural point of view, you can only gain your true liberation, as John Henry Clark has put it, when you go back to your gods and goddesses. You cannot want, let's say, to bail the river. Let me put that, I use the word bail, and when I say bail, we use that in the West Indies. When we go to fish sometimes, we block the river in certain parts, and we throw out the water, so we call it bailing the water, you understand? Well, you cannot want to get the water out the river and stand in the middle of the river. It's not going to happen. So you cannot want to have, let me say, a liberation as a cultural group from the oppression and suppression, the domination, and stand, accept what is there, live according to that. It's not going to happen. You have to have a contrast. And African consciousness hasn't done you anything wrong. African religion never put you in slavery, nor your ancestors in slavery. And it's only African religion can help you, the consciousness through it, to help you to gain a liberation from a cultural point of view. That gives you strength. Because of the influence, Set sends out the influence of the society stops you. Look what the woman has done. She slammed the door into the face of ourselves. So we also slam the door in the face of ourselves, the truth to ourselves. And by we slamming the door to the truth, what we do again, as I said, we accept the pain and sorrow to be something that is given from God. So what happened with that day? We much prefer to remain, we don't have proper economics, so our infrastructure is very bad amongst us. We don't have a proper infrastructure. So our economics is clean out of line. Don't talk about your religious and spiritual life. That is totally clean out of line. Because you're following a different concept, a different God, and think that God in itself is going to bring you liberation. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. As the saying goes, as it is above, so it is below. So if you have a wrong concept about who you are, live in that concept. Don't think that concept that you live in, which is wrong, in the beginning, will bring you any type of salvation. It's not going to bring you. And these are some of the things that tricks us along the line. So it leaves us in the state, as I said, as just reflex thinking. Because of desires. Those desires that we have, we believe to ourselves that we are thinking because of the desires. But we're not really thinking. If I should prick your toe when you're sitting there, automatically your foot is going to jump. Well, it's the same thing. The desires that come in within the nervous system, causing you to believe that you're thinking. So yes, man, I want to go down there and do this thing, but you are not really thinking. It reflects action that is coming from the wider society, hitting the nervous system. And because it hit the nervous system, you believe you're thinking, and many amongst us who call themselves intellectuals believe to themselves that they're really thinking.